Again, question 19, one more on missing words. It is a dash to live in a land without dash. Okay. So we can clearly see it talks about some geography. There is a mention of land and there is a mention of something. So this is some form of resource. Yeah, it could be water, it could be food, it could be crops, it could be agriculture, it could be anything. But from this we can clearly see that since it is a land, there is a land without something. That something is going to be the resource we are looking at. Yeah. Even with all the technological advancement and economic growth, there are still millions who live in war zones where life every day is filled with dash. Okay, so we can clearly see that there is a contrasting idea here. First, there is a mention of even with. Even with is like using despite. So all the technological advancement, so something good is happening and there is a mention of even with, which means there is something bad that is going to happen at the second part of the sentence. So we are looking at something that is negative in this blank. Because in spite of all the technological advancement, there are people who are undergoing some negative experiences in life. So we have definitive clues for the two blanks out of the three. Let's get out to the options and see how they fit in best. Option A, coincidence, prejudice, adventures. Okay, let's fill in. It's a coincidence to live in a land without prejudice. Okay, so prejudice fits in there best. I mean, prejudice is nothing but a preconceived thought or biases towards something. For example, when we see someone who is dark in skin tone, if we tend to think of them as robbers or thieves or something of that sort, that's a prejudice. They need not all dark skin men need to be thieves or robbers. So that is a prejudice. I'm giving this an example. So it is a coincidence to live in a land without prejudice. Would it be a coincidence? It could be a rarity, it could be a common thing, but it could be a coincidence. I doubt so. So for me, the first one does not fit in, but the second one seems to be okay. Let's move on. Irrespective of the technological advancement, there are still millions who live in war zones where life every day is filled with adventures. See, is adventure a negative connotation really? Adventures can come in both light. It can be positive or it can be negative. For example, if I say I went for a trek and I have never been to trekking or hiking before this, it's still an adventure, but I have positive outcomes out of it. But this blank clearly states that there is a negative word that needs to be filled in because there is technological advancement, and even despite that, there are millions who live in war zones. Remember, wars are never peaceful or wars are never happy endings. There could be one side that wins, there could be other side that loses, but nevertheless, the losses faced by both sides are huge. So we are looking at something negative, and adventures to me doesn't fit in yet. I wouldn't eliminate it yet, but for me, this one doesn't fit, and this is slightly out of place. So we'll have it as the last option maybe, but not necessarily the most convincing option. B, privilege, bigotry, terror. Okay, it is a privilege to live in a land without bigotry. Yeah. Bigotry is nothing but discrimination in terms of targeting one group or one community or some group of persons and kind of creating an animosity with one group. So essentially, the thought that there are enemies out to get there, etc. So it is the privilege to live in a land without bigotry. So without bigotry is a land which is slightly more rational and peaceful. And it's a privilege, yeah. Given the world and how we are living at now, there are always conflicts between one country and the other. There are fighting, there is violence, there is war, there's everything else. So it is a privilege in this point to live in a land without bigotry. So both of these tend to fit in well. Let's see the last one. There are still millions who live in war zones where life every day is filled with terror. Yeah, this captures the essence of the passage very well. So now that we've seen this convincing an option, we'll eliminate A, we'll keep B for now. Let's see, there is more convincing options. This one fits in better. Terror signifies the fear factor and the negative kind of experiences that the war zone people go through, and the other two also perfectly fit in. Let's move on. Option C, lovely pride episodes. Okay. It is a lovely to live in a land without pride. Okay. So first of all, can lovely follow a? There is an article here. Can lovely come in there? No, it's grammatically itself this doesn't fit in. So this straight away out. Even if you consider the other one, it is lovely to, let's forget for a moment that A doesn't exist. It is lovely to live in a land without pride. Is it? Is it lovely to live in a land without pride? Not necessarily. So, I mean, this option straight away ruled out. D. Punishment, hate, agony. Okay. It is a punishment to live in a land without hate. Yeah. Land without hate is obvious. Land, let's say we fill in this with a second blank. Land without hate signifies that the land is peaceful. The land exists in harmony. There is peace, there is friendship, there is brotherhood and everything else. Is it a punishment to live in such a land? Not necessarily. It is a privilege actually. So, if this were privilege, I would have gone for this option. So, the first blank, the word for the first blank makes me eliminate this option because it's not a punishment, it's a privilege. So, D is not, so obviously we are left with B, which happens to be our right answer. So, let's fill in and read it once more. It is a privilege to live in a land without bigotry. Even with all the technological advancement and economic growth, there are still millions who live in war zones where life every day is filled with terror. Absolutely, perfectly fits in. So, yeah, we are going with B.